Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Yana, and we meet again on your favorite hour, Coffee with Dr. Yana, where we explore the connection between psychology and everything that is paranormal. Today, we have an incredible guest with us, the world renowned expert of the paranormal, researcher of the past 20 years, media celebrity, her divine elegance, Michelle Desrochers. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. I don't think I've
If
ever
I,
quite been introduced this way before.
oh yes, your divine elegance for sure.
Thank
And
you.
if I may say a few words about you, that for the past 20 years, you primarily focused on the malevolent hauntings and potential non-human attachment or infestation. That is huge. uh, you are known all over the world, and you do UFO studies, cryptozoology, folklore, and legends, and everything that is out of this world. And you featured so many times, and I've been watching all these shows. Uh, Paranormal Survivor,
Mhm.
right? Everything that is with the paranormal, Paranormal Survivor, Paranormal Nightmare, right?
Mhm.
My worst nightmare, Hotel Paranormal. And in addition to everything you know, you live in a haunted manor house.
Yes,
That
I
is
did.
so incredible. And how in the world did that happen?
Um, well, long story short, I have had paranormal experiences my entire life. I've had mediums within my family, generational mediums. So I wasn't discouraged as a child with respects to if I saw something. My father would sort of, though he was gifted, he never talked about it until later on in life. But my mother's side of the family often spoke about it. So it was never discouraged. They would just ask me questions or pull out a photo album. Do you recognize anybody here? So it stayed with me. I believe that all children are gifted. And if it's not discouraged, the chances of them holding on and practicing their ability will be greater than if they're discouraged and made to feel silly about talking about what they think might be an imaginary friend, which you have to be careful with, by the way. But, a lot of those children will tend to shy away from those abilities. So it just went on from there and having an attachment, which I did speak about for the first time in full length on my paranormal nightmare. I was asked to present the story in detail, to which I did. And, people were just like, because people realize, I think, that they could relate to it, that there are
If
so many things out there.
you don't mind sharing with us, what was that story about?
Though, I'm sorry.
What was that story about?
What was about my attachment? Probably I've always felt I had a presence in my life as a child. And somewhere along the line, of course, going through puberty. Now, being a researcher, I can tell you that people going through puberty, children going through puberty, pre-adolescent age, women going through menopause, that our emotions change, especially females. Our emotions change to the point where it attracts, it attracts things. So something malevolent did come in and completely infested the house, and it would do things like open and close doors. It would run I mean, for 4 years, I would have a marathon with this thing whenever I would come home because I was the oldest, so I got to have a room in the basement. Thank you. So
Oh,
I know. So you're coming down the stairs at night, and then I would race to the bedroom because I could feel something at my back all the time, and I could hear it boom, 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 and I would close the door and something would slam like their fist, or it sounded like something was just slamming into the door or hitting the door. So it became very unnerving after a while. I would have friends over and things would just levitate or like throw, like I used to have albums. I'm aging myself a bit, but yes, albums. and they would just sort of fling out of their sleeves because I always had them where the sleeves were facing outwards, so I could just go in and pull them without
Wow.
damaging the sleeve, right? Just aware, always taking care of my things. And they would just like, and you just
And they
watch.
knew that was your thing to do, right? That this
Yes,
was your preference, and they knew
yes,
that, and they used it.
yes. And then I had a friend over one time, and there's a young man I was dating at the time. I was 18, and I had gone upstairs, and there was an album playing, and all of a sudden the needle picked up, and it moved, and it dropped perfectly onto another song. Of course, this wigs him out completely, so he goes pushed him up the stairs. He said he went about 3 stairs, assisted, shall we say, and ended up, like, face planting the landing, and that was it for him, and then that was it for me. I was used to this presence, and I'm a big believer in acknowledgement is empowerment. Don't acknowledge it and problem solve. But, everybody else in the family was feeling that heaviness, and back then, it's not like we had, paranormal television. It's not like if it was out there, it was very, very sporadic, and I didn't watch them. So I went to the public library and I got a book on clearings and how to cleanse your space. And the best I could come up with was a book on white witchcraft, which would show you how to cleanse your space and how to have spirit gardens and things like that, things that apparently spirits didn't like. So, like, okay, who knew? Basil, it's like, oh, okay. But just different things. I eventually cleared my own house,
And you were 14.
taking control. And it's what I teach today.
No, Michelle, were you 14 when you first cleansed your house?
No, actually, I was probably closer. I was in and around the 18 mark when I first
Well,
did it. When I was 13, I started having, like, whatever it was pretty dormant to that point. Because I started going through puberty at a young age, and you start noticing little things, but I didn't pay much attention to that because there was no need to. I didn't know to look for it. I didn't know that it should be there. It's not like I could see dead people as a child, but it's not like I was subjected to seeing other things. I would see the occasional deceased relative or something along those lines. So there was no need or reason to think that there was anything else in there. I remember going for a walk one time and seeing a young man that had committed suicide, and it looked like a gunshot, so it wasn't pleasant to see. And that was way up around the lake where we lived, because we lived up near a lake. It was a beautiful community. So then I started seeing things that I didn't really want to see. Now I question, well, what was it that was showing me that image? Was it really a young man, or was it this entity that had come in, because it eventually showed itself in a somewhat, I mean, it could have been worse. I've seen entities throughout my life that are not pleasant to look at. And I just remember waking up one night, and all of this mist started coming up in my room. And I hadn't been asleep very long. And when I woke up, um, just because I could feel the temperature change, I basically looked and something was coming up out of the floor. This big massive, like, I see horns coming up, but it was white. It wasn't like a gruesome looking thing. For what it was either something trying to not frighten me too much, to say, like, "Pay attention, this is the type of thing that's here," or it was something that's just trying to maybe lure me in a little further, putting me off my guard, because it wasn't unpleasant to see. It was just startling.
now, Michelle, your parents were supportive of your gift. They didn't quite say, "Oh, this is something abnormal and we have to deal with it," because you said that you have a very interesting lineage going way back to the Knights Templar as well.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that a lot of viewers will be able to relate to it, although for them, the situation probably would not be so easy and supportive,
Mm.
because in our society now, I live in California, it's not so. And nowadays, the history has changed, and we don't burn at the stake, right?
Mm.
We don't get burned.
True.
at the
Yeah.
stake. Yeah, but at the same time, it's easy to take this gift and turn into something abnormal. Like, I am so grateful to my parents that did not consider my gift an abnormality. The
Mhm.
only thing they told me just to share it with them, which I did, and I didn't share with other people because they
Mhm.
told me that otherwise, it's schizophrenia. Early on, I found out what it was. And the reason how they knew that it was not is because the information that I had given them was always the objective reality,
Mhm.
always supported by the facts and things that would happen in the future and things that I saw they would be able to experience as well. So I
Mhm.
think it is absolutely important, the support. And even if there is no support, like you, for example, you didn't know how to cleanse the house and you went to get a book. Although with your interesting lineage, I am sure that you had it in your genes and you knew where to look. You already had that gift that was speaking to you, your own genius, your own
Mm.
daimon, and
Mhm.
that was guiding you in your life.
I believe so. My father was a little more, again, also very gifted on his side of the family, and he just didn't want to talk about it. Later years, he opened up about all the things that he saw, including, in the house.
Hmm.
But he basically was just like, I don't want to be, this is ridiculous. My mother would be like, we know it's not ridiculous because my mother was seeing things happening in the house. My younger sisters were seeing things happening in the house. So it became a point to, where everybody was experiencing something. Even when I moved out of the house, I was 20 when I moved out of the house and things continued on. Things continued in that house until after 60 years, my mother sold the family home. And, my father went into assisted living and she ended up living on her own. And the new people who moved in were still experiencing things. When we moved everything out of that house, things were happening. My mother lived alone in the house for a while. Things were happening and amplified. So
Now,
it's all there. Support, absolutely, absolutely, it's very important.
but then the question that arises is that in your professional practice, cleansing the homes, knowing the background, the story behind what is happening in those homes, on those premises, not necessarily homes, the properties,
Mm.
right? Um, is it possible that no matter what you do, or no matter what other people do, exercise a place, cleanse a place, it will always be, uh, it will always have an attachment of particular entity that will never leave, and we as humans don't have the ability to rid ourselves of it.
Okay, well, it, I don't know that no place or any place. I don't think believe there's a place here on this planet that can't be cleansed. I think it's a matter of how much work do you want to put into it. I think the question is, should it be? I don't believe that just because
Oh,
something is there, that it has to be popped out. It has its right to
absolutely.
be there. And
Absolutely.
and when I'm dealing with families, I look at many factors. I look at how many people are experiencing something in the home. Is it one person? Is it several people? Is something centered more around one person than everyone else? I like to know the history of a location. I like to know everything, the series of events that led them to me in the first place. And I will usually, if it's centered around one individual, especially, I will request psychiatric assessment, psychological assessment, and I will usually ask for two and permission from the doctor to work with the individual. Because if the
Hmm.
individual is on medication, most doctors are like, yes, no problem. Make sure the individual stays on the medication. And it has nothing to do with me. I just want to know what the mindset is and what the boundaries are. I'm not a doctor. I am not a counselor. I am nothing of that nature, medically speaking or psychologically speaking. I am there to try to address what it is that's leading them to believe that something is happening to them. I've worked with psychiatrists and psychologists, especially with families. And, if something's going on, it's like, okay, I'm not the psychologist. So I work with some psychologists that even do regression therapy. I say, this is where I think you should be with, because I don't know, what's going on in here, nor am I qualified to know what's going on in here. I can only guess at what your experience is because had similar experiences. What I try to do is change the mindset of the individual. I believe we are in control. And I have used to have a waiting list that went 18 months to 2 years. So I would only be able to work with people via phone or via the internet on how to help them cleanse and work their own space and take control and let go of the fear. And by the time I would actually be available to go in, they would be like, no, we're good. I think we did it. It's just been really quiet. You gave us the tools that we needed. We took control as a family, and they're able to deal with it themselves, because I think sometimes a lot of it is about the mindset. And if you're going to be fearful, that's a type of energy that feeds these things. So if you take away the food, you'll often hear me say, live, love, laugh, keep smiling, things like that, raise your vibration. It's all about vibration and frequency. So if you don't give it to them, they're going to starve, they're going to go elsewhere. So,
Starve or go elsewhere. How interesting. I remember in my practice, I had a couple that have had a lot of problems. So the wife really thought that the husband was possessed, and she essentially brought him to me to be delivered. And the husband, of course, did not know, it didn't think that he had any problems whatsoever,
of
right?
course, yeah.
And when I started working with them, and I work in the area of archetypal psychology, have discovered that his primary forces that are behind his incredible talent and fueling his life and his professional life, although creating havoc in the personal life,
Mm,
they are the primordial tonic forces that
mm,
when I ask if they were to be removed, they said no, because that is what moves that person forward. That is what will never be removed. And that person was chosen to move that um, industry forward. And anything that would come along to put an impediment on his way would be just taken away. And those chthonic forces, in fact, they were creating the havoc in his personal life with everybody, every single person that would come his way, because he was supposed to devote his life to what he is doing solely and completely. So some things are not supposed to be removed at all, even if we think as humans here that we think, oh, we are the kings of the jungle, right?
mm,
Oh, no, we're not. There's some things that are much stronger and much more intelligent than us, and we just don't have the capacity
mm,
to even deal with it.
mhm.
It's very interesting.
It's interesting for sure. I agree. But there are also a lot of things out there that will tell you anything that you want to hear, or will tell you whatever it takes for them to be left alone so they can go on and do whatever it is they want to do. I believe we all have free will, and that free will, or whatever, allegedly, we make all these arrangements before we come here to live our life. And if that is the fact, if that's how it works, and of course we won't know till we actually get there ourselves, we have to assume that it's potentially a possibility. Um, but when you have something that comes in and infiltrates your life and causes you all kinds of misery, or let's say something that comes in and attaches to Let's use a serial killer, for example, because we've seen that happen.
True.
Okay. Now, said serial killer passes away. Okay. That attachment remains. We have seen spirits with attachments and they're held back from crossing over. That
Oh,
journey is over. So, why would that entity remain just feeding off the energy of this human spirit, not allowing it to move over? The job is done. So you see, it continues on. We've run across spirits, one man murdered his family, pull the attachment, all of a sudden, the man breaks down sobbing, even in spirit. And he's been like that for over 100 years. Do we leave him? Or do we remove an attachment that caused him maybe to be not of sound mind or to maybe puppeteer him a little bit and murder his family? Let's look at Charles Manson, for example. What do? You know there's an attachment. We know this. We've tapped it. We've seen it.
right.
What do? Do you say, well, you deserve to roam the earth for the rest of your life with your attachment, be a bottom feeder, let it feed off your energy? Most people would say, absolutely. I look at this and go, you can move on in spirit and attach yourself to anybody, any any human being on this planet. And then what do? See the cycle continue? So what does this person he attaches to? Does all of a sudden he start feeling like he wants to be a Charles Manson or behave like Charles Manson, for example, or any other malevolent individual? There's all kinds of people I've worked with, and where, for example, let's say there was an alcoholic man in the family of the prior family, passed away in the house, alcoholic. Well, the new family moves in, and the husband, because he's the male, starts drinking heavily and starts taking on these characteristics. So allegedly, this happens. They can, if there's something in the space that is creating that sort of energy, then all of a sudden we start behaving like whatever it is that's influencing that energy. Then that serial killer, Charles Manson, could attach to somebody else, and maybe, just maybe, that cycle begins again. So what do? Remove the attachment, sort of try to, like it's not like we decide where people go when you move them on. They go where they're meant to go.
Mm.
And at that point, does it become a thing about atonement? Does it become a thing about, we're not judge and jury. When you move a spirit over, we're just showing them the way. From that point on, whoever's on the other side is who determines where they go. So it's just food for thought.
Interesting. So, Michelle, have you noticed, like, if you knew those people before, for example, that before they had an attachment and after they had an attachment, have you seen them change physically in appearance, the facial structure, even the expression? Do they have the resemblance with a person or the spirit that we know that it has, of course, in the world of the spirit? Do they have a resemblance in
I've
their
seen people.
appearance?
Well, I've seen people in photos who have been superimposed on by spirits. It's crazy. So I imagine if the camera lens could pick it up, that you might be able to pick up something like that in real time. I think if you're very gifted, you could. Could we physically see something? I mean, what I have physically seen is nothing that drastic or dramatic. I mean, I've seen people be very foul and negative and just being looking angry. When you're angry, you tend to have that dark presence about you, if there's something influencing. I've seen people, when you remove the attachment, their entire demeanor changes. They just
Mhm.
seem to have a lighter feel about them. They start smiling all the time. You can see it in their eyes. Their eyes just seem to have a brilliance to them. It's the same with clearing a house, and you see this a lot. They try to describe it in some of the shows. So the house seemed dark, but after the clearing, everything just seemed brighter. I think it's something similar to that.
You're saying that their eyes even change and the light start to shine through. Now, they say there's a saying that the eyes are the mirrors of the soul. Now,
Yes.
when you look at people, I know that you are able to sense and you know this information, you have the knowing. However, when you look at their eyes, do you immediately know what is behind, or sometimes that those spirits or entities that are residing in a person can hide?
Mhm. They definitely will try to hide. In my experiences, I've seen people whose eyes are just completely dark. You don't see the color at all. They're
Black.
just black. Yes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Um, I also see the behavior when they're around me change because they don't. It's almost like they don't want to be recognized. They go very
Absolutely.
quiet. I watched a young man. We had cleared. Basically, it was the first time at the house. We just gave it a good cleansing, and we had to go back. And this young man looked at me and he said, "Look what I can do." And he took like a bangle bracelet. It was too small for his wrist. And he looked me in the eye and he pushed his hand through, dislocated his wrist and twisted his arm and moved it up forward and moved it back slowly and went, "See?" So it's like, in a way, letting me know I'm still here, which we knew. We knew, it was just a matter of who you're hiding in because every member of the family had dark eyes, all had experiences. We're all just, you can see some were desperate, some were angry, and some just sat there silently, just looking out. So it's like, which one are you in? Because there's usually more than one. So, it's like, okay. And it took 16 years to finally, get that thing cleared from the young man who was 5 years old at the time.
5 years old.
Yeah. And
And
he
that's
was
in
16. Sorry. So it took another 11 years where he resurfaced because the family decided they did not want to partake in anything. And the researcher who knew him messaged 11 years later and said, "Here, he's still there, still has it." It's like, okay,
and then they also know that you know. That's how they start behaving
mm,
differently in your presence, and they become
that's right.
sweet and nice, which you can see that in their eyes.
Yeah,
That is not the person that is so sweet and nice, kind of putting us our guard to sleep, right?
that's right.
I remember that I was once I worked in one organization where we prayed for the healing of people, and I was new at that organization, and I could see the entities on people. And the interesting thing is that the people will come and they would leave donations, and that's how that organization existed. And I would start telling people who work there, who were praying for those people for the healing, that you can't just pray for them. Here's an entity that needs to be removed. Here, here, and here. And the name of it is this. And for that one, it's named this way. And uh, that is, for example, that the relative that
Mhm,
it was the dead grandfather of the person who was coming there for past 5 years to get the prayer for him for his health, and he had problems with his body, with his family.
mhm.
And then all of a sudden, so when I prayed for them, they stopped coming back. And of course, that caused a problem in that organization because people stopped coming. They get rid of all their
Of course.
problems and they don't
Yeah,
bring the money back. And I
right.
started questioning myself being there. However, there was another person that also just recently came in, and he looked at me and he said, Yana, he said, we both know who we are. You know who I am, and I know who you are. If we
Mm,
don't get into each other's business, life is going to be okay for both of us.
mhm,
And that was the person, that was the man who knew everything about my life. And that was the first time that I met him. He
mhm,
knew everything, and he had the abilities that
yeah,
the regular human being wouldn't have. And I
mhm,
looked in his eyes and I knew who I was dealing with. And I said, okay. And then that person created his own church. Imagine. He didn't go and create the Church of Satan, for example, right? He went
mm,
and created Christian church. And a lot of people from that organization they started going there, and a lot of people from from the church that he was going to, and I at the time they came to his place.
mhm,
And when I met those people, I said, listen, he is not the person of God. He became a pastor there and he was making his own little congregation. I said,
Yeah.
this is not the person of God. Look
Mm,
in the eyes and wake up. To which
mm,
he came to me and he threatened. And he said, I know what you're doing. I decided not to interfere. However, I saw the people
mm,
later and they said that you were right. That was not the church of God. So a lot of the people, a lot of those bad spirits,
mm,
they get in the head of some sort of organization under the disguise of being benevolent and working toward the benefit of the people.
mhm,
So by looking on their face, by looking at the eyes, you can see. However, like you said, that they hide and they will do anything to hide.
mhm,
A lot of the times that I could not see and I could not even sense because that's how good they are at hiding. And then all
mhm.
of a sudden, bam, and the
That's right.
complete manifestation
Mhm.
takes place.
That's right. That's right.
Let me, Michelle, I have a question for you. If um, you possessing that incredible talent as you do, that many people don't, now, has it been difficult for you living with this gift of discernment? You see, you're able to manipulate the energy, you're able to see what is cooking behind the curtains. Um, did you experience any negative sort of retaliation from the spirit world at all
Well, I
for
want to
doing the
be
work that you
clear.
do?
I want to be very clear. I am the person in the forefront of a fantastic team. It's always been that way. I've always been the one in the forefront because I've always been the one that people see. But there's an amazing team behind that, and they're very gifted. And a lot of them have been on television. I've made sure everyone has had their 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 day in the limelight, so to speak, because I want them to be recognized. But it's still their place with their abilities to discuss that and what they do. Because um, you know, with my viewer, for example, works a lot of criminal cases and stuff. So I don't go there. I don't go there. But I can tell you that I'm only one person, and my abilities, they all work differently. Everybody works differently, but it's the team that makes it work. And we also work with beings on the other side of the veil. And that is what makes it successful as well. Like there's a lot to the component of the group. So, with that being said, when I was doing a lot of on-site, because I know the question you're asking, and when we were doing a lot of on-site investigations, we did one time because I don't fear any of this. I know my mindset, and I know I can control a lot of what happens pertaining to myself. I get startled, don't get me wrong. It's like if you jump out, something
Mhm.
jumps out at me, I'm going to be startled. You could jump out at me, I'm going to be the same startled. It's not going to be any different. But, early days, I was a little cocky about it. I was just like, nah, you don't bother me, go away, just go, whatever, something growl at me, like, whatever. I still get like that, but with a little
So
bit
you
more.
go in and you take care of the situation.
I do, I do. I'm a little more humble about it these days, though. But because every being is as much as they're there to cause harm or infiltrate somebody else's life, they're still an otherworldly being, and there has to be an element of, I hate to say respect because of what they are or what they represent and the havoc they bring with them, but you have to respect everything within the elements. You really do. And what I didn't bank on one case that we did, and it was featured on television, and the one family would not participate in the show at all. I was brought on just as the researcher for one of the gals who was involved, and her place was actually two houses. Her place was cleared for the most part, but again, you have to keep up on it. She lived a few hours away. It was hard to be there all the time. And the other place was like, "No, we want nothing to do with this at all. We don't wanna give an interview. We don't wanna partake in the show. That's it." So they what the show did is combined the 2 cases into one, which made it very confusing for the viewer because they didn't
Mm,
really understand why some of the things were happening the way it did. But realistically speaking, the entity was the same. And we left for that night. And as we were leaving the second house, we realized there was a whole back section that we weren't even made privy to. We had no idea it even existed because it came in under the tree
mm,
canopy and it was blocked off from the inside. You couldn't see it unless it was a big circular driveway, unless you came around the other end.
mhm.
And we're less like, is that a hole at the back of the house? It was huge because it used to be an old trading post. So
Wow.
it was a big building, very old building as well, like from the 1800s. So anyway, my daughter ended up losing her sight and just, she had perfect vision. And she came one morning and she goes, I can't see. I'm just like, you mean you can't see? She goes, I can't see. Didn't Paranormal was the last thing on my mind. Logic. I'm a logical individual. So went to the doctors, we went to the optometrist, we went to eye specialists. They took pictures of the inside of her eyes,
Mhm.
CT scan, MRI, psychologist, psychiatrist. Is it a mental thing that's just causing, because if you're having emotional or something's not going on up here, it can cause physical things. So we looked at everything. And a couple weeks go by, and it took my family doctor to say, because we were friends as well, and he said, what did you last work on?" And I thought about it, and
Uh,
I'm like, "Oh my God, I think it could be a possibility."
yeah.
So, we had initially talked about going back, but the family we were supposed to go back and help did not want us to go back. So
Oh,
I tapped in. I'm like, "What do you want?" It was like, "Stay away." "Well, we're not allowed to go back anyway." "Oh, all right." Problem. you know, and she came to me like that evening and she said, "I can see." So say what you want. The one vision in the one eye never came back to as good as it was. But the thing is that she could see and you know, and that was that. And people are like, "Well, was that a deal?" No, it wasn't a deal. I wasn't allowed to go back. I just said, "Yeah, whatever," because it's just like, the family didn't want to continue with anything. So we were not going back. We were not meant to go back.
and
So
what's important that you could do that decently because you don't have to go onto the physical premise
you don't.
per se in order to do the work. And of course, you can do it decently. And when people schedule an appointment with me, I don't know them.
Right.
And I
Right.
look and I research and I know what story they are telling me now and what story is actually happening behind the scenes.
Hmm.
And that's very interesting that you can do that distantly as well
Hmm.
because
It's about energy. It's just tapping in. Believe me, when you work with certain beings, they know everything about you before you ever step foot in there. And
everything.
they are already tapped into you. They know where you are. All you've got to do is say, "What?" I've had things come to my home before I go to a location and, try to,
Before,
oh, yeah, trying to flex their muscles, growling at me. I was like, "Yeah, whatever." I remember one time I was supposed to go to this one house and it was really sad. It was a really, really sad situation. But anyway, I was just in my ensuite and I was just finishing up, getting ready, brushing my hair. And as I walked out into the master bedroom, there was 3 knocks on the bedside table, which was marble. So they really had to be a hard hit for me to hear it. And I just grabbed my purse and I said, "I'll see you in an hour." And I just walked out. It's like, I don't care. Acknowledgement is empowerment. I'm just like, I'm not giving it to you. I'm not scared of you. And sure enough, it was there. It was there when I got there, and, while I was in I always like to leave a voice recorder on just while I'm having initial contact. I try to have it
Mm.
very laid back. I don't go in there drilling people. I can just get my questions just by asking and having, sitting over coffee, having a conversation, and believe me, the fact that they're being ignored, you get all kinds of growling and hissing and stuff going on in the background, and it was all in there. It was all in the recording. But when I got there, the family had been through so much, that woman dropped at my feet and just grabbed, and it was just like, and she had somebody from the church, her church, in there, and he goes, "We'll be back to help." Never came back at all.
Oh, Michelle, that gives me goosebumps because we can talk about it. Of course, we can tell stories, but at the same time,
Yeah.
those are real people that go through it.
Yes.
And when I say that people thank me for literally, there was a woman that was kissing my knees. What in the world is happening?
Yes.
Her pain was so severe. The entire house
Mhm.
was under so much turmoil. And when
Yes.
it lifted, he was so grateful that she actually kissed my knees.
Mhm.
That's people are brought to the point of desperation a lot of the times.
Mhm.
And that's how they would thank you. And I can relate to that because how old was your daughter when it happened with her side?
Uh, 14, 15.
14,
Yeah.
15.
Mhm.
Mine was actually, he was 3 years old, and we lived
Mm.
in the one of the most haunted homes and for 10 years. And I did not know up until when I watched that episode with your daughter, I did not know that that could also be associated with my young child, small
Mhm.
child, losing her eyesight. And of course, a lot of other things and illnesses were happening at the time, but losing the eyesight,
Mhm.
I did not
Yes.
know about it. But then again, like you said, that we have to respect them. A lot of the times when you watch the shows and the movies, oh, they're ordered, get out of here, you filthy spirit, whatever it is. Like,
Who are we?
who are you?
Yes.
Who are you? Pure mortal. Oh, yeah, you think that you have the power from God who gave it to you, you know? And
I
you
believe
have
mindset
to,
is important, though. I believe you have to be respectful. Take
you have
control
to
of
be
your life,
respectful.
but be respectful. Because if you don't, it's going to be
Absolutely.
looked at as a challenge. And let me tell you what, challenge accepted is how the response you're going to get. They'll accept that challenge every
Oh,
time.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Michelle, one thing happened to me, and now I can, of course, talk about it. But at the time, it was one of the most horrible things that ever happened to me. I remember just like you said, you were cocky, right? Like young and cocky and everything. So I was at the time, and I look in a spirit. I know the problems, the origin of the problems or different entities. I can see them. I read
Mhm,
people of them. I clean their homes and exercise or different kind of things. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said that, oh, the devil would have to work hard to deceive me because I can see through everything.
mhm,
Oh my God, Michelle, for the next 3 months, I knew no difference between darkness and light, bad or good. I did not
mhm,
have any compass. I was bombarded by all of this conversations, that were absolutely deceiving. I did not know. And yeah, he took the challenge. He said, oh, yeah, we're
mhm.
going to see that. And that's exactly what happened. And it took me a long time to get rid of it and to humble myself. And humbling doesn't just come, it comes with experience, of course. So I understand perfectly.
Humility is everything. I think we have to go in as servants. I've always had Spirit say, serve, serve, because we have to be service to others. We can't be service to self. You have to put others first. I've often spoke about this because I think it's important for people to know. There's a lot of researchers out there, a heck of a lot more now than there ever was, when we were growing up. And now it doesn't take anything for people to do it. People will go watch a TV show. Next thing you know, they're a paranormal group. Now,
Expert.
I commend the groups that go out there and do really good work. I do. I commend them. I Where I disagree with some, and I know there are some that have a lot of ethics, and those are the ones I refer people to. If people want physical contact, it's like there are those really great researchers that will put people first and not just say they put people first. And what I mean by that is that when I go into a place, when somebody contacts me, I don't look at them and say, "Well, you're lucky I'm here to help you. No problem." I look at them and I say, "Thank you for entrusting your family to me. Let me take the weight for a little while. Just let me and my team worry about this. You worry about your family, work on your mindset, be strong. Wherever it is you draw your strength from, whether it be your faith, whether it be one another, draw from that and put on a funny show, open the windows, dance, listen to some music. Let us do the rest." That is what's important. And it's why I stopped. It was a big reason why I stopped going in and communicating with things. I don't need to investigate everything by asking for a sign, by making that invitation, because malevolent things 9 times out of 10 starts with an invitation. And it doesn't always come from the people who are infected. It comes from somebody else going in and challenging them, these things to magically appear to them. I demand you to do this. I challenge you. And it's not, communication doesn't just happen with a Ouija board. A communication or invitation happens with a phone app. It can happen with a pendulum. It can happen with a ghost box. It could happen with a board, with and any type voice recorder. Talk to me. I want you to
Oh,
talk to me. I
oh,
want you to
voice
talk to me.
recorder.
Well, it
Uh-huh.
is. You're inviting and requesting communication.
And it will
That
come.
and it will come. Now, then how do you get to do this? Well, we want the magical picture. We want that wonderful, voice recording. We want, there's so much that it's just like, but you get to go home. What does the family do? Because now you've got a being there that's like, well, you wanted to talk to me half an hour ago, and I'm not done talking. I'm not done communicating. What do you do then at that point? This is where I like working even with parapsychologists who will come in and they've got a totally different, because I've consulted with some. I think you've had Elliot Van Dusen on. I consider him a dear friend. And
Talking to
you
him
know,
pretty soon.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, he's wonderful. You love him. And it's just a matter of like, okay, like we bounced around, because I worked with a client that he ended up working with. He goes, okay, what's going on with this? And we banter about it. Not banter, we can communicate about it. And you have the logical side of things, but then you have the really very real side of things. And I like working with people who can walk the line on both sides. You have to keep the logic going because it's a process of elimination. In the end, when you're left with something, you don't say 100% unequivocally, "Yep, it's a demon. Yep, it's a ghost. Yep, it's this, it's this." No, for me, what it does is it means I get to explore this a little bit more because I didn't find the answer to it. The
Hmm.
paranormal is a field essentially of hypothesis. We don't know for sure what any of it is. It could be a dimensional bleed through, as my producer likes to say. It's dimensional bleed through. Maybe, it's yes, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. But it could also be other things that create a lot of uh, the same things that a ghost, a demon, an angel. There are extraterrestrials that do the same thing. A demon looks,
Oh,
sounds a whole lot like a reptilian to me. They're out there.
absolutely.
Light
Well,
beings,
speaking.
angels, grays, like you just have to start looking at things like sleep paralysis. You have the scientific, you have the ghost stories, and you have the extraterrestrial, and they're all exactly the same.
Now, if you look at the history, Michelle, we and even our sacred book, historical, ancient, secret book, secret as well, sacred book,
Yes.
we would see that God can be so malevolent, right? And the punishing people and all of the light. If you look at the theories of the ancient aliens, that making a lot of sense,
Hmm.
meaning that I could not understand what was written in the Bible and why would God be punishing people so much. When I understood, when I had my own visitation, when I understood that, oh my God, they were just extraterrestrial. And because the people did not know what it was from their own frame of reference at the time, they could not name it. So they became God's angels, of course, when they were just extraterrestrial.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I remember that when I was 14, that was, I think, when I was 7, and then I was 14, I started seeing the grays. I had no idea what it was, and it scared me to death. I remember that as a child, I ran to the bathroom and I closed the door, then transpired through the bathroom door, and they're like, "Don't be afraid of us." And I'm like, "My God, I'm in the bathroom, like they're everywhere. So don't be afraid of us. We just need to share information with you."
Hmm.
And they did. And at the time, they told me that there's in 6 months there's going to be a huge earthquake in Iran, and it is going to kill thousands of people. And I told my parents about it, and I'm like, how in the world? And that's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come and they tell me about the horrible things that are going to happen, and they do happen, and who is at fault. I don't quite understand what is the reason of coming and telling us and informing us of what is going to happen. I don't know. I have not really figured it out, but I know also that there have been, how I know what is an objective reality, because as a child, I remember that my parents were watching TV at the time, and they started showing a lot of happenings, a lot of people at the time seeing grays, the little
Hmm.
gray people, that's what I call them. And I even made drawings of them.
Hmm.
Later in life, they started coming and saying that they are the consulate of four. Like, okay, it's either my gift or maybe it's time for me to go and commit myself somewhere.
I
And
think it's a blend of everything. I do. I
yeah,
believe it's a blend of everything for you. I believe that first off, it's lineage. Like if you are a contactee or an experiencer, chances are so was a member of your parent, either your mother or your father, maybe both, your grandparents. I realized that, and I asked my mother before she passed. I said, "Any extraterrestrial, you know?" Like she goes, "Well, you had a big fascination for the stars from the time you were very, very little." Her father, my grandfather used to have a telescope, and back then, like it was a lot of money to buy a telescope. He bought a telescope, and he would watch the skies all the time. He had many extraterrestrial experiences. I found out just through our bloodline, where it went, that it made sense that we would have those types of experiences. Then I found out my father on the other side of the family was saying, "Oh yeah, we see UFOs all the time." I was just like, "What?" So, and my mother, stated to me at one point, she said, "Well," she said, "your sister was supposed to be a twin." She goes, "Yet one was born, yet there were two to start with." So, I started really putting two and two together. And, I still have experiences, incredible experiences, downloads, everything. You know, they've shown up in the house. I've seen giant portal open up, right, driving, and I'm sitting here big, and I had a vision of that almost in the same area, probably a year before. And when we were driving home one night, And I looked over into the sky. It was all the same colors. It was all iridescent pastels, massive, and we can only see that like a big arch. And I'm looking at the person I'm with, going, "You do see this, right?" And he's like, "Nope, not a thing." I'm like, "I cannot be the only one to see something. It is immense." It was a clear night sky in the summertime. There was no reason for it to be there. And and he's just like, "Not a thing." Just go. I was mind blown. I woke up with Gray right beside me. I don't even say woke up. I mean, I was falling asleep. So I'm just lying in bed. I'm just getting ready to call it a night. And I look, and there's like a 4 to 5 foot Gray standing beside me. They're so close I could just touch him. And I just looked at him and I went, nope. And I rolled over.
Nope.
Nope,
So you just
no,
didn't
not
want to
doing it.
communicate,
Nope.
and
I was tired. Yeah, didn't want to. So it got to a point where they were becoming more regular, to the point where people would see them, like, move behind me, even when I did the radio show, and people were
mm,
just picking up on them. And it's like, oh God, okay. That was the other house, of course, the haunted manor. We sold it, by the way. But
oh,
that was,
you
we
no
did.
longer.
Yeah, no, we don't. We don't. This one's much more quiet, which is very nice. But here we have different experiences, like music. You hear, when my mother was in the hospital, just before she passed, I was hearing a lot of choirs singing, or I would hear Viking chanting, and we were hearing flutes, all kinds of phenomenal music. But the choir, it almost brings you to an emotional brink of tears. It was so emotional. Going, what is going on? Because it went on for 2, 3 straight weeks. Even if I was driving during the day, I was tapped into it. And when just before my mother passed, a friend of hers, very gifted individual, said to her, she goes, "The angels are singing for you."
Uh,
I'm going, hell
uh-huh.
yeah, they are, because you're freaking keeping me up every damn night. So I just left it at that. So this house comes with different things that happen in it. It's still extraterrestrial activity. So,
Interesting, because I remember that I sing myself. It was one of the first experiences how I heard singing. That was a choir. Again, I would go and start again. I get not
oh, you're cutting
much.
out. You're
Oh,
cutting out lots. Yeah. I'm only catching
you
you.
can hear me?
Uh,
It's
yeah, I can hear you, but you're cutting out.
interesting. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can
Is
hear
it
you now.
better? Is it
Yes.
better? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. Okay.
Interesting. What I was saying.
The choirs.
Oh, the choir. That's right. I
Yes.
put
Yeah.
it was like the threshold,
Yeah.
and and then I would ask them, "Will you sing?" And they would say, "Well, angels are singing." I go, um, I would like angels, but not fallen angels. But what can I say? Sing and they fallen. So interesting.
I found it very fascinating because I hear frequencies a lot, and like just in real time I can hear frequencies. um so for me, once in a while you'd hear music. The other house, I mean, we were so used to hearing conversations at the other house, because the spirits would be talking and roaming, and doors, you hear the sounds of doors opening and closing, but they weren't really opening and closing. Mind you, I could come downstairs and watch a door open in front of me middle of the day, like things like that. So we were quite used to all the sounds of the other house. But when it was really quiet, we would hear big conversations going on. And some of it sounded like it was frequency, like old radio shows or old television. So I got used to it. But here, when we moved in here, I thought, it's quiet. It was
You weren't
so,
used to it. It's like,
I
"Oh,
know, but I
for me."
I don't know, yeah, and I think I ruined it because
Ah,
because
ah.
now now, the ET have followed, and we have different types of ET, not just grays, but there've been different ones. But the frequency, like, I can't get away from that. And we don't have any crazy towers or anything around here. It's relatively very quiet area, but I've always been able to hear frequencies. So I'm always going to hear things.
Can you tune on a particular frequency?
I tune into many. They're all different. Sometimes they're painful. Like they're so high pitched. I'm like, oh my God, I'm buckled over. Like, geez, it's very hard. Other times they're just very gentle. But they change.
Now, Michelle, ever considered not doing what you do? Has it
I
ever been so you said not to do that at the very beginning? Perhaps you wanting to do something else and then said, "Oh, I'm not doing that. It's difficult on a spiritual. Oh, yeah, I can hear everything." Did it ever happen to you?
no, no.
You
Once
always knew.
I always knew that I think when you start doing it, you realize that you're supposed to do it. There are times, don't get me wrong, like, I'm semi-retired from film. I've done the occasional documentary. I like doing the radio shows. I don't mind doing like the, written print articles. I do a lot of those, a lot of consultation. I don't want to be out of it completely because do believe that people need to find the team. They do need to find us and they need to, if they need help, that's how they're going to find us. But I also know that we evolve and the paranormal to me, as much as I find it interesting, and I think I will always be a seeker of knowledge. I will always be a student of it, among many other things, because we have to keep moving forward. You have to keep learning. You have to keep researching because things are not what they seem. There's so much out there that when I say not what they seem, I mean from a very paranormal standpoint. We see one thing, but there's a whole lot more going on that a lot of people can't see, and it's definitely out there. So, I think it just got to a point where, for me, I evolved from it, and when I started realizing that maybe some of my experiences were growing up were not just paranormal, but they were also extraterrestrial. Now I'm aware of it because I'm a researcher. I've spent 2 decades, seeing all of it present itself, and I think they've taken me where in areas where I needed information, and I find myself researching and taken into an entirely different area. I'm going, "How did I get here?" And I start researching it, and I'm going, "Oh, I guess I was supposed to see this." And then things start to make sense, and then people find their way to you. That's one thing that the radio show has done. Um, People have gravitated to me that I would not have expected, or vice versa. I'm shown somebody saying, well, this person, you're supposed to bring this person on, and I'm just kind of like, okay, like I have a waiting list. Our show has like a waiting list of people who want to come on. And yet, every now and then, something or someone, a topic or an individual is presented to us. And we're like, okay, I need to contact this person because that's my part of it is like I do the contacting. So I'm just kind of like, okay. And through that, you have listeners, and then those listeners have experiences, or those listeners may need assistance, or somehow people who are supposed to be within your circle, or people who are supposed to cross your path, find a way, and that continues the journey.
Like,
Yes,
I just fell on your path.
you did. I'm glad you did.
My path through TV. So
Thank
if
you.
next to be is meant to be for.
I think so. I think people of like mind will come to a point where they'll gather. I believe that. I believe that, it gets to a point where people who do this sort of work or who do light work, whether it's planetary or whether it's with individuals, will find a way to one another because that is the energy combined into that collective. It matters. It matters and it works. You raise a vibration, and it will come from people who can enlighten other people. And then those people will become enlightened and it will just keep growing. Or you may have others that go the other way. Like I've studied many religions. I've studied the occult and esoteric. knowledge and a lot of those that sort of things. And at one point, people will tell you that, like, I was pretty dark myself, but it's just like you delve into it, you work with it, you research it, it can easily consume you. So you have to be so so careful.
Like, it's just said, he said that if you want abyss, abyss started staring back at you.
Yes.
You be very careful. And oh, I know so much about I the spirit, yeah,
Oop,
spirit. I'm
cutting
gonna
out again.
go
Yeah, quite a bit.
quite a bit.
Yeah,
It's better now.
it's still cutting in and out.
Oh yeah, better now. No,
No. Oh, it comes in waves, so I'll
comes
put my
in
finger up
waves.
when you do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is good. Okay.
Oh, this is good. Okay. I have to do something with myself because I forget immediately what I was saying. Hmm. In any case,
Yeah.
I am so glad that we are talking about it because professionals like you who have been in the area for so long and for whom it is not just nonsense, for whom it is the objective reality, it is
Mm,
the lifelong research.
mm.
People like you, Michelle, and particularly you, help so much people with their experiences because they don't know where to go. I did not know where to go when I started to experience that in my house. And I had to do my own research and how to do it. And by the time that I figured it out, how to cleanse my house, they would just come back again and again and again. And then I got so tired. I moved out of the house. I
Mm.
moved out of the house. I couldn't live there anymore. And
Did they
as I
follow?
did, they didn't. Oh yes, yes, I did. Did some did, and my bed was shaking in California as well when I was the violence shaking there. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna stop it right here.
Mhm.
And I when I moved out, you are gonna believe it. I'm not gonna say you're not gonna believe it, but for a lot of people, it is something extraordinary. I had a big portrait on the wall behind of me behind the glass. It flies off the wall, falls in the middle of the room, and shatters it to pieces. Oh, I'm like, the hint is taken.
That's
Could
right.
not
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
not be more clear here. And I'm
Yes.
leaving. And there was a woman who lived in our house that used to live there. She was the previous owner who died in that house, and nothing that we did we were able to get rid of that spirit. And interestingly enough, that she harassed every single woman that lived in the house because she was the owner.
She was
So
the
I'm so
owner.
glad that you do this incredible work and that people flocking to you, seeking help, and you're there, the light on their path that is helping them and guiding them where they're supposed to be going. And you relieving so much stress and suffering in this world, for which I'm grateful to you. Thank
Oh,
you very
thank
much,
you.
Michelle. I
Thank
hope
you.
that we'll meet again, you and I, for the next conversation. I know that you're so busy and you hop from one interview to another and
Yes.
your radio programs too. So
Yes.
we will
Yes.
conclude this podcast today, but we will definitely meet again. And this has been a podcast, Coffee with Dr. Yana, and I'm your host, Dr. Yana. Until we see each other again, goodbye. Bye, Michelle. Mwah.